Everyone, we'll stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. First, we've got agenda approval. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, you have item 13E was added late, and this was the letter of approval following up on our conversation with Mike Lickner last week.
Alrighty. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Thank you, David. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public input. Do we have any public input today? Doesn't look like we'll have any public input, so we'll close public input. Move on to the consent agenda. There again, any changes to the consent agenda?
No changes.
Alrighty. If I can get a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Thank you, David. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, public hearing
I think we actually have to do that at
at a certain time.
a certain time.
Okay. Do you know what time that is?
It should be 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? 9 o'clock? It is 9 o'clock.
It is 9 o'clock. Did we publish it for 9:30 or 9 o'clock?
It doesn't say a time.
It doesn't say the time on there, but I believe it's 9:30.
Okay.
9:30.
That would
okay.
make the most sense.
So we'll come back for the public hearing at 9:30. Next, we'll have county employee recognition. Today, it is Olia Stanwire. Congratulations.
Welcome.
I don't have the paperwork with me to say what department she was with. Oh, she's with the Sheriff's Department. And began the jailer full-time position, dispatch jailer began the full-time position on December 13th, 2022. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, now we will move on to highway and survey.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good morning.
Start us out today, we're gonna do the annual surveyor's report. So we got Ryan Miller here, and I also want to point out, Ryan's good and all, but he doesn't do it alone. So we got Bob Mislowski here too. He's the survey tech, so
Hello.
turn it over to you.
Yeah, we'll just go through kind of some of the numbers we've got this year. It was a slow start. There was some personal issues, but we ended up still having a fairly productive year. We are now up to 3,252 certified corners, which is just getting under 90%. So we're doing pretty well with that, you know, especially when you compare it to other states, especially in the northern Minnesota area. You know, a lot of them are down, you know, below 50% even monumented. So it's definitely showed that we've kept the program going and doing pretty well. We set 50 new corners this year, and there was 3 that were turned in from private surveyors that were certified. We did 26, reset 26 monuments, whether they were due to road projects with the highway department, or we found them in the woods and they had been ripped out by logging equipment or disturbed in some way. One thing we started doing just recently, there was, along with the original corners, there was some islands on some of these lakes that they were surveyed later on after the original survey, but they were still considered government corners. So we've started going back to some of those to see if we can still relocate those and get up-to-date information on them. And we did recover 10 monuments that were set between 1919 and 1979. And so I thought that was, and I think we only went and looked for 12 or 13, so we had a pretty good success rate on those. And so there's about 30 or so in the county, and so we'll continue.
Were they accurate when you found them?
So I used their original survey information, and they would start at a good certified original corner, and then they would have essentially a bearing and distance across the lake to the island where they set the monument. And I think of the 10 we found, they were all within a foot to a foot and a half of what I computed. So I was really surprised at how accurate they were, because, a lot of times they were either, running across the ice, or sometimes they triangulated that distance. And, we've run into issues in the past where they did methods like that, and it gets to be a little sketchy in some parts. They're not that accurate, but these ones really were, so I was surprised.
Interesting.
We set 9 county property corners. This was in the Deep Lake Park project for CHIP. So we got the boundary of that monumented, and I think they were gonna go set some property signs and stuff to at least let hunters know that they were not on technically tax forfeit land anymore. GPS coordinates, we have almost all of our corners with GPS coordinates now. We only have 6 corners left that are certified that don't have coordinates. So, that's a big benefit to us for if the monuments become disturbed in the future, we still have that GPS coordinate that they can be much more easily reset instead of, relying on the bearing trees that may not last real long. So we updated 56 corners with reference ties and coordinates this year. So that's just kind of our maintenance part of our department. So anytime we find a corner that is missing bearing trees or anything, we have to update that information and file new certificates on those. So that's what that 56 corners are. We worked on 20 different surveys requiring survey work or subdivision, and to establish either property corners or boundary lines. A lot of that is dealing with CHIP's forestry guys. If they are, running a timber sale, they'll want to know where those boundaries are, and so we help them out with that. We looked at 10 issues with other departments, whether that be something that pops up with the highway department, or, the recorders or environmental services. Anytime they have some kind of survey-related issue pop up, they reach out to me and we take a look at it. And we wrote or reviewed 4 easements and legal descriptions. And I guess for looking at next year, we're just gonna keep continuing towards that 100%, trying to get everything monumented. We're getting down to just a little over 400 monuments left, and so it's getting down kind of to the nitty gritty. And I'm hopeful that maybe that 10-year mark we can get full monumentation. But like I tell everybody else, the easier ones are done. The ones that are left they're tough to get to. They're tough to get satellites. That's why they're still there. I mean, we've probably been to almost every corner already that we've tried to get them set, and so you just run into various issues with that. So that's why those ones are still remaining out there. We got a couple townships that are getting real close to being fully monumented, so I would like to try to wrap those ones up. White Oak, Heart Lake, and Lake Hattie are all, there's down to maybe 5 to 10 or 15 corners in those townships that are away from them being fully monumented. So, hopefully we can concentrate on those areas and get those done kind of right away. Otherwise, the work kind of takes us wherever we need to be, especially working with NRM. If they need property lines in a certain area and we don't have corners, we try to hit those areas first right away in the spring. help them out as much as we can, so we run into less issues as far as, going back in 5 years later, and then, the boundary lines were way off when we did it before, so just trying to prevent future issues from popping up. And then, we did kind of update our website, on the county website. We put a lot of our survey records and survey information on there for the private surveyors to have access to. And so I think that's been a big benefit. It at least cuts down on phone calls looking for us to, send them information. So they have access and can get most of that stuff themselves. And so we'll just continue adding to that as we go. And, we're starting to work on our certificates for this year, and we'll get those recorded and get those updated, as we go through the winter here. And that's pretty much, I did want to point out the two maps that I had sent along. It just shows, where we are as far as monumentation for 2022. And then I found my old map that I'd created in 2013. So, it's about a 10-year window, and you can see, how far we've come in that 10 years is, a lot of those big gaps that were there are almost fully filled in, so. And you can see the areas that are left that are kind of the big points to continue hitting over the next couple of years. So that's about all I got, if you guys have any questions.
Looks like a lot of the open areas are county lands or public lands.
Yep, for the most part, there's a big area there in the northeast of Clover Township, and the southeast of Lake Alice. We've had some issues with that township line there. There's kind of some conflicting evidence from a couple old surveys. So I've been trying to do more research on that and determine what's the best way to go about getting that finished. And then down in Bedora, that's just one big swamp, so there hasn't been much done down there.
Alrighty. Does the board have any other questions?
And just a note, this map is, it's, should we say unique anyway, in comparison to other counties?
Yeah.
Hubbard County is sitting in a very, very good position with remonumentation, and that's, through actions of this board, previous boards, along with help from NRM, putting in $25,000 a year towards remonumentation. Also helps with their timber sales and whatnot. And now, the association that Ryan's involved with, the Minnesota Association of County Surveyors, is making a big push to find legislative funding for remonumentation in other counties, all counties for that matter. And so the first question we ask is, can we get paid back? Well, no, the answer is no. But there will possibly be money if that was to be pushed through for the maintenance of
Yep.
the remonumentation. So all in all, it would be a good thing, but we are way ahead of other counties with this, which is a huge advantage to the public, to the private land surveyors, and to our departments, of course.
Yeah, even just the record upkeep itself is huge for our county. I've talked to other county surveyors, and anytime if they happen to, do work in a secondary county, or, I know one got hired part-time as the county surveyor, and just trying to find any records at all, it was virtually impossible. And they ended up finding some stuff in, a dusty box in some back office. But just to have our stuff all, centrally located and indexed, and, the ease of access for the private surveyors is just a tremendous benefit to the public as a whole, so.
When someone, when a private surveyor does a survey for an individual, do they use your monument points as reference
Yep.
points?
Every once in a while, there may be a corner that they don't agree with, but that's pretty few and far between. I don't think I've run into that issue since I've been county surveyor. I know there was a few in the past where there was, two monuments for the same corner, and, some surveyors went off one location, some used another, but, for the most part, once we certify a monument, they're pretty much gonna go with it, so. And as far as that goes, we put a lot more research into, the corners when we certify them, then it's not cost effective for private surveyors to, do as much legwork as we do. Not that they don't do anything, inaccurate or anything like that, but, they have to charge a client for the time that they're putting into their survey. And so a lot of times I'll have them reach out to me and say, we're looking at doing a survey in this specific area, what do you have? And we'll kind of work together, and we'll end up setting some other monumentation in there that will help them with their survey, and so that they, they're not doing as much work on their own, that it's, kind of a benefit to both of us, because, essentially our goal is to get these monuments done anyway, and it just kind of steers us in a direction for a location to work in some cases, when there's that need for monumentation in that area.
And then this map here is available on the county's website.
Well, yeah, the whole map itself is an interactive map. And the one that shows the whole county with all the corners is, you can click right on any corner and it'll pull up the corner certificate for it that's filed in the recorder's office. And so then surveyors use that to, for their section subdivision, they'll just pull the corners out, and, usually they go and double check coordinates on them, and then they'll do their subdivision and tie into other stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, next agenda item, we got review and approve quote for a pickup for the engineering department. I'll give you a little background on why this request is coming to you. A while back, we hired the fifth engineering tech in our office, and we needed a vehicle for them right away, and I had the pickup available, so I let them take my pickup, and in turn, we were looking at the carpool and thinking we were maybe a little bit heavy, maybe one vehicle heavy on the carpool side, and so we were gonna take one from that. Mileage was down with COVID and whatnot, but we took one vehicle out of there, and then not that long after, one of the employees was involved in a crash and took another vehicle out of the carpool. Decision made at that time, we were still gonna kind of trudge along, see if the mileage was gonna work, and got a request recently that they are definitely short one vehicle there. They would either like a replacement with the engineering, or not the engineering, the insurance proceeds, or maybe we should put the vehicle that I'm currently driving back into the carpool. So that's the, after checking with Enterprise, it's a big delay on getting these vehicles, and it's not Enterprise's fault, that's just the market and availability of these vehicles, but it would take some time. And so decision, put the Explorer back into the carpool, and then look for a pickup more suited to our work to replace the one that I was driving prior to that. So I went out for some local bids to see what the timeline was, if there was any availability, something on the lot. I did receive quotes from Thielen Motors and Park Rapids Ford, obviously both here in town. And as part of that, checked with Enterprise, and more information on the Enterprise. The last time we ordered vehicles through them, I think it was this past January, with an estimated delivery of August or September. Once August and September got here, they actually canceled the orders. They were unable to deliver on those, and so we have to go back through the order deal for that. So that's to give you some kind of a timeline with what's going on with these vehicles. As part of this too, I did check with multiple vendors on the state contract, and they can order vehicles, but it's the same thing that Enterprise is experiencing. You're gonna have, you might be lucky and get a 4-month delivery, but probably closer to the 8 to 10. And so at this point, we don't feel that that's an option, and really the pricing isn't that much different. The low quote came from Thielen Motors. It's actually a little bit lower than what I had on your sheet. He gave me a final quote. It's $43,000. Let's see here. I think it should be 500 less than that. $43,515. And in comparison to what we're seeing for Enterprise pricing, or fleet pricing for that matter, they're just under 42,000. That's for a pickup it's down one trim level. This is a custom, which is one up from their work truck. And so we would use the proceeds. We just recently had that auction, brought in about $36,000 or $38,000, and we would make up the difference through our equipment fund. So we've got the funds for it. It'd be my recommendation that we go with Thielen Motors for for one pickup and,
So the county will own this, it won't be part of the enterprise?
correct, yep, it'll be a county owned
And it's available now,
right now, yep,
but it is a Chevy.
it is a Chevy.
I don't know, I might wanna do number 2 there.
That's up to you guys. Yeah.
I'll move to approve the low quote.
Thank you, David. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Very good, thank you. Third item, review and approve quotes for replacement of radiant heater in wash bay. In our wash bay, we've got the radiant heater hanging up there. It's obviously in a very, very wet condition a lot of the times. It's old, the original with the building, so we're looking at about 20 years old. We tried a couple times to repair it, smaller bills to try and get it going. It works for a little while. Now we're at the point that it's got to be replaced. Went out, got quotes for this. This would be a split cost between transit, NRM, survey, highway, so, you know, not a lot for each of the departments. Trying to get them all to compare apples to apples. We received 3 quotes, the low being Samuelson Laney out of Park Rapids, $5,148 for the unit listed there, the Modine. That is a stainless steel unit, which should last a little bit better than what we've currently got. So, but anyway, 20 years on the one was actually pretty good. So that'd be our recommendation for the low quote.
Shar, I see you're off mute. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, thank you. No, David asked the question on the last vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Item 4, review and approve resolution to enter into delegated contract process agreement with MnDOT to be eligible to receive federal funds. They update this agreement every so often. It was time to get it updated. There was enough changes on it. Basically what this is for MnDOT to act as our agent in accepting the federal funds through the Federal Highway Administration. Similar to what we do with townships, small cities and whatnot, we have to be the pass-through for those funds. This kind of sets out the rules, the processes, and how we use their money and what we're obligated to do as such. So it's kind of a formality to get the resolution in there in support, and this authorizes then the signature of Administrator Cadwell and myself to move forward with the agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And last on my list, I've got 2023 project updates. Just to let you know where we're headed, most of the projects in our 5-year plan, we're proposing to move forward as planned. We've actually got the 3 LRIP projects from last year. They were carry over to this year due to just not having everything ready. City of Park Rapids, Irigo Township, and Henrietta Township, and they're all being designed by a consultant. And so they're actually set to move forward. The 2 township projects have letting dates of January 20th, and the City of Park Rapids for Fair Avenue is set for January 18th. In addition to that, we've got our CASA 9 project that goes from the county Clearwater line up there to Besida. That is set for a letting for January 10th. So we've got a busy January of lettings, and this is fantastic in my opinion. I think we're ahead of the game here. I think we'll get on the schedules of the contractors early. Hopefully we'll see some good pricing. But at the same time, totally anticipating that pricing is way up right now as expected. So we're watching some of the MnDOT pricing that comes in. Our estimates are set as such, but with that said, that's a different estimate than what we originally set our 5-year plan up in. And so there's 2 projects that are listed on our 5-year plan that I would propose that we push to 2024, and they're smaller county jobs. They are, one's on CASA 44, which goes to our truck station up north, and the other one is CASA 30, which is over by Benedict. And those are 2 currently gravel roads that we were looking at grading a short portion, a couple miles, and then paving due to maintenance issues, who uses that roadway and whatnot. So it's not a do or die type project, it's not tied to anything else, and so those projects I would like to push back just due to available funding. MnDOT is cautioning us on the numbers. Well, they had cautioned us at 11% reduction in state aid from last year. We now heard this past week it's gonna be closer to 4, which is a very good thing, but nonetheless, it's still less than what we had received in 2022, so that changes the availability of the funds a little bit. So for this year, we've got left to get ready for advertising CASA 7, which goes from Dorset up to CASA 40. We've got the CASA 49 storm sewer project in Akeley that we tried to let last year. We only received the one bid on it, it was too high. We're gonna try and time that with the MnDOT work coming through on Trunk Highway 34, so you can look for a letting of late March for that one. We've still got County Road 119, County Road 82, and then the 2 township projects to pave this coming year. We finished the grading on 119 this last year, so that's still to complete. And then some good news, we've got the CASA 13 bridge replacement on the Crow Wing River schedule for this coming year. And I think when we originally programmed that, we had talked about using bridge bonding on it. Well, bridge bonding pays 50% of the eligible items, which is the bridge items only, not the approach grading. But at our federal meeting last week, we did secure $950,000 of federal funding. Everybody's been asking, what's happening with the IIJA money? Are you getting any extra money? Well, here we're starting to see some of the federal money flow in, so that's a good thing. The $950,000, we could see a cost of that bridge anywhere from 1.3 to 1.6 million on it, so the 950 is significantly more than what we would have received for bridge bonding, so that's a good thing for the cost on that bridge. But even better than that, we have the CASA 13 road project coming through the following, either the next year or 2025, and we secured 2.65 million for that project. So Hubbard's sitting real good on the federal front for the money, 3.6 million on 2 projects. That's really gonna help our 5-year budget look a little bit better, so.
All right.
That's where we're at.
Any questions?
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
I think we could probably go back to the public hearing. Which is really just a second question to ask if there's any public comment, and specifically related to the proposed fee schedule for 2023.
So is there any public comment? Appears none. Okay.
We can close the public hearing and move on with the meeting.
We'll close the public hearing then, and we'll go back to the regular board meeting, which brings us to the Sheriff's Department.
All right, first item on my agenda, requesting approval of the purchase of service agreement between Hubbard County and the Hubbard County Sheriff's Posse. This is an annual agreement that we have done for years, and basically it's for the services that they provide us, and we split the taxes on the property, which is how we base our fees, so,
I've always thought that this was a good deal,
absolutely.
$427.
Yep. Yep.
I move to approve.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, second item, requesting approval of the purchase of service agreement between Hubbard County and the Lakes Area Dive Team for the year 2023. This again is an annual agreement where we, hopefully we do not use them, but if and when we do, and they've been there, right on the spot to help us out for recovery searches. And that amount, it's been the same for many years, is $5,000, so we're looking for approval of that as well.
And they'll help even in the wintertime,
Yes, they will. Yep.
not me.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Shar.
And I'll second that one.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, third item, requesting approval of purchase of a camera system. There's two quotes attached. As you see, they're virtually identical. One has a little bit less shipping, but requesting approval for lens equipment out of St. Joseph, Michigan, in the amount of $7,137. And this money, it's no taxpayer dollars involved. It's coming out of the sheriff's contingency fund, which is basically fine money that goes into a special fund that gets released by the judge for certain projects such as this. So that's where the funding will come from.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, that's the last thing I have.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Soil and water.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thanks for
Morning.
having us here today.
Morning.
So, as you know, we put in the proposal for the Crow Wing River One Watershed One plan in the spring, and Bowser did select us for funding. In order to move through the funding process and actually receive those funds, we have to put together a timeline, work plan, and then have all of the major partners sign the MOA. And I did provide a copy of that MOA that we did have Jonathan at the Hubbard County Attorney's Office review. And the only updates to that from what was circulated in the spring is that we included language so that the White Earth community can join, and that they don't have to join immediately. They can take their time to go through their process. They're very interested in participating, but they just started to get involved and need a little bit more time to review their options. So the rest of the partners, the SWCDs and counties, are working to review the documents and get the MOA signed by all partners, turned into Bowser, so that we can receive those funds and begin planning in January or February of 2023. And the planning grant does go through December of 2025, but we would like to be done before that, hopefully submitting the whole plan to Bowser for review at the end of 2024. Did you have any questions for me on the process? Hubbard SWCD is planning to be the fiscal agent for the planning process.
I was thinking there was a little bit of an aggressive timeline, but I'd like to see that. And I do know you have experience with the Mississippi Headwaters One Watershed One plan, so.
Yeah. We did select a team to work together who have worked together on other One Watershed One plans, hoping that since they know how each other works and what each of them is good at, that we'll be able to move through it more quickly, having all that experience and just abilities on the team. So.
The public comment period starts in June, is it? And have you decided on locations?
You know, we don't have the locations figured out yet. If anyone has locations that you think would be ideal for people to be able to access, I'd love to take them from you. I believe we'll be looking at planning those steps when we meet in January or February. Yeah. It's a big area. And so making it accessible for everyone might be a little bit challenging. So far for the pre-planning groups, everyone's been happy to come here. And then also happy that we can offer the Zoom option for anyone who wants to listen in but can't get here that day. So I expect we'll have more meetings in this location in the future, but we might try and rotate.
Yeah, and I guess I would assume you'd have a meeting probably in each of the counties.
Yes, yes. Excuse me.
So I don't have any further questions. Get a motion?
I'll move to approve the memorandum of agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
While I'm here, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up that since I presented our budget for 2023, we have about $150,000 more dollars becoming available next year. Some of it is from the Enbridge and State of Minnesota agreement to put money toward projects. And then we also have a new contract with the Mississippi Headwaters Board to do some outreach in our northern counties and our northern townships. Some events that include nitrate testing up there. And then we have some additional funding coming from DNR Forestry to get the landscape stewardship plan written to complement the One Watershed One plan for the Crow Wing River.
Good.
So, good news. So it's good to have all the things coming together and to have other people say, hey, we're ready for that. We have some funds to put toward it. So, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll present that budget when we have it ready.
Yes, yes. I would like to include the updated version in our work plan. And I did bring a couple additional copies of our previous work plan and our most recent newsletter that I could leave here in case anyone wants to pick them up.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Natural resource management.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just one item on the agenda for today is a review and approval of the 12 timber tracks for our January 9th timber auction. These are 11 new sites and one is a forfeited sale that we are reselling. In total, we have 525.2 acres, 7,988 cords of timber with an appraised value of $168,937.25.
I guess, I noticed a lot of them are in my district, but I guess when you've got 10 townships in your district and a lot of it's public land, that makes sense, but.
Does that number reflect continually rising timber prices? Or?
Timber prices have been holding fairly steady.
Really?
In fact, the last two auctions we've had, of course, they've gone down a little bit, but I think that's because there was some storm damage in those. So we're anticipating a fairly steady rate on the timber. Might see a slight increase, but fuel prices are fluctuating and causing some issues, so we'll have to see where that goes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Solid waste.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so the agenda item I have this morning is just to discuss PFAS sampling at our county landfills. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has requested that landfills across the state agree to voluntarily sample for PFAS, which are per polyfluoroalkyl substances. PFAS are labeled as a forever chemical that are persistent in the environment. They can be found in things like Teflon, waterproofing material, which acts as like a barrier to a coated surface. So So that would be against like water, grease, food stains, things like that. Some examples where PFAS have been found include firefighting foams, pesticides, cleaning products, water-resistant clothing, food packaging, so many different items that people use every day. There have been studies that have found PFAS present in soils, rainwater, Antarctic ice cores, polar bear tissues, human blood, and drinking water supplies. So it's very widespread throughout the entire environment. So landfills may end up being receivers of some of this PFAS-containing waste. With our two construction and demolition landfills, we have greater restrictions on what we're permitted to accept, basically being limited to building material. So we may not have the concerns that a full municipal solid waste landfill would have. That would have a liner and accepts pretty much all waste products. As with most other landfills across the state, looking at what the MPCA is requesting, I'm not in favor of volunteering to sample for PFAS at this time. The sampling has the potential to cost a significant amount of money, which many facilities are viewing as a future unfunded mandate from the Pollution Control Agency. The MPCA has developed a memorandum of understanding that they want facilities to sign up for, and then they would offer to pay for lab costs for one of 2 rounds of this sampling that they're requesting. However, this would just be for the lab costs, and it doesn't include the site work sampling costs, which is really the biggest expense involved with this. Some of the numbers that we've been hearing is it could potentially cost $20,000 or more to do this sampling for our facilities for each sampling event. Landfills across the state have kind of joined together and formed a landfill coalition, and this is made up of both public and private facilities, and they're working on a unified front to address the concerns with this testing approach that the MPCA is proposing. So the Landfill Coalition is looking into possibly conducting a third-party study to study PFAS, and the reason for this would be to ensure an unbiased study that isn't conducted by a regulator such as the MPCA, which many people view as a kind of a conflict of interest for requesting this study. So my intent, unless the board objects, would be to notify the MPCA that we are not planning to voluntarily sample for PFAS at this time. And my goal is to continue to work through the Landfill Coalition, to have discussions with the MPCA on sampling for PFAS. And I think it would be good for us to consider joining this third-party study based on the work the Landfill Coalition is doing. So,
Josh, how would you do the sampling? I can imagine if you had a lined landfill and there'd be the leachate where you could sample that, but if we don't have any lined.
So for all landfill facilities, it's sampling the groundwater, the monitoring wells around the facilities, so it's not sampling the leachate.
Okay.
Yep.
Josh, at some point, do you foresee MPCA then coming in and telling you that you somehow have to clean this up?
If it would be present in our wells, it'd be something, yeah, that they would be regulating us on to clean it up, yeah.
I would be in support of what you're suggesting, that we would not be part of this study and then be a part of the coalition.
And I think it's an important issue, but it's a lot broader, a lot more widespread than just landfills. It's everywhere in the environment, so I think we need to be taking a careful look of not being singled out as just a landfill issue, so.
Will they also be testing wells that aren't by landfills to see if it's present in the aquifer?
I guess I'm not sure what the overall intent is for the MPCA, but.
I think you would need a baseline or something where they could say over here, it's where it's so many miles away from the landfill, it's not present. You know,
Yep.
but what do I know?
When Josh brought this issue to me, I completely agreed with him that we don't want to be participating in this upfront as long as it's voluntary. But I didn't want he or I'd be making that decision without informing you that was the intent of that decision is, we need MPCA to give us a little more direction or for some other direction to come along regarding the testing and the regulation of these materials in the water.
Do we need to pass a resolution or just a consensus?
We just need a consensus to know that for this point in time, he's got the authority to not comply with the voluntary request.
Yeah, I think this would be a state, if they wanted to test it, this would be a state-funded testing.
Yeah, and Tom, you were at they had a presentation at the AMC there that Roger Schroeder from Lyon County with kind of heading up the landfill coalition, and I thought he did good, and there's a lot of good information in there too, so. I don't feel there's many facilities around the county, if any, or the state, I'm sorry, that are gonna be volunteering to sample at this time, so.
So Jess, I read that, even when you wash clothes at home and you have, those little flakes can come off. So this is substance that just happens as we do our daily lives in our houses also, correct?
Yeah, I think PFAS has been present in pretty much everything for a long time, so it's kind of unknown where it can be found. I mean, some of the results, like I said, are just, it's in rainwater it's coming down too, so it's hard to know everywhere it's coming from, so.
Interestingly enough, there was an article in the Star Tribune this morning that 3M is moving to eliminate PFAS in the production of the chemicals that they're working with. So this is a broader issue than just our local landfills. But I don't think we want to be collecting information that MPCA can use to punish us with later until we have a compliance plan in place. It's very unlikely that it will come down as a mandate without adequate funding at some point in the future. But until it does, I think this is a good course of action.
And that was going to be my question is are they still producing PFAS?
Yes, but one of the major producers is moving to eliminate them in the chemicals they're using.
Alrighty. They'll come up with something else just as bad.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Finance.
And if this item looks familiar, it's because it is familiar.
As you say, is this deja vu?
A little bit. Good morning, Commissioners.
Yeah, between all of us, we just need to go back and redo the paper trail relative to this process, and I'll let Kay give the update.
Originally, the request was to name this unnamed body of water to Charles G. Kennedy Lake, and we since learned that the DNR will not accept a name to be in a real person's name. They will possibly accept Kennedy Lake, and so that is now the request.
And there was also some of the paperwork that the work that we did didn't get submitted to the right office, it got submitted to so there's just some other things to back up and do. The family that made the request has been involved in this conversation going forward, and we wanted to move it forward as quickly as we could without it getting in the way of something else, which is why we're asking to set the date for a public hearing to consider this again, January 17th at 9:30.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to set the date for that time.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Human Resources.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Before you with the Human Resources is personnel policy revisions. Without going through and reading every single one there, we have gone through the personnel policy with revisions and deletions. This would be effective January 1 of 2023. The items that we've addressed here are in unison with language updates that are being reflected in the 2023 union contracts as well too. So it's a good start on going through our personnel policy and making updates. And we will continue to do so with other areas and sections throughout as well. There's only one area right now that I would make a housekeeping note to, that I'm going to add the statutory provision to 16.06 expense reimbursement under C2. There's a statutory provision for that, so I'll just add that statute in there so we have that reference right there. So the request is to approve these personnel policy revisions, deletions effective January 1, 2023, and any prior resolutions, board actions in reference to this would be sunset, and this, the personnel policy would be the effect, with the exclusion of the one noted there within the board agenda item.
I've got one question. Reading through this, it's on page 208 or page 6 of 25. Under policy responsibilities, it shows the Board of Commissioners, Personnel Committee, and then it says coordinator. And I was wondering if that coordinator should be changed to administrator?
And that's a section, that section 2, I believe it is, up at the top. Basically, this is referencing only in section 2 the terminology of benefit eligible. So we, the second page, if you scroll down to that, Jeff, that is the only portion of section 2 that is being edited at this time.
Oh, okay.
So those other types of things, as we continue to go through the policy, will get updated as well.
Okay. That was my
That
question.
to match section 16, terminology is being updated for benefit eligible at this time.
Oh, okay.
I got one question too. That's on page 17. I'm just wondering about, it says $10,000 life insurance. I thought it was going to be $20,000 in 2023.
The 10,000, as we get there too, 10,000 if this is an employee who is working 30 to less than 35 hours a week will receive the 10,000 life insurance.
But full time, 30 or more. would be the
35
20. Oh,
hours
okay.
or more a week will receive the 20,000.
Okay.
So we've kept the personnel office quite busy with some of the changes that are coming up relative to the contracts. You'll see those as well. You got a summary report of the changes in the contracts. Those are primarily what these personnel changes, policy changes are in reaction to. So Gina's been working long, hard hours on this. I've had a chance to review these things. We do always retain the right to administratively correct something if there was an error made.
Okay.
So those administrative pieces will clean up. But the intent, per Commissioner Kruger's question, is that the 20,000 life insurance is for full-time, which is 35 or more hours, and that the 10,000 would be for anybody who is working 30 to 35 hours. When we introduced the language relative to benefits eligibility, it trickled down and cascaded and created a lot of other issues and, good issues, but nonetheless, paperwork that we have to dot the i's and cross the t's on.
Looks like there was a lot of work put into this. I appreciate that. Guess I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it'll be a busy year at the Personnel Committee again, cleaning up, following up, and working on that, so.
And now we'll move on to the administrator.
And in relatively no particular order, but we'll start with the fee schedule. And the combined fee schedule is a reiteration of the change in combining the fee schedules that we did last year. I don't believe there were terribly many updates or changes to this, but there were a few. There were a handful of changes. And regarding fees, statutorily, our fees can only be those to cover the reasonable costs. We don't get to make money on fees for the services that we provide as a city or a county. The requirement is that the fees cover the cost of the service provided. And they usually don't, but
Any significant one that stands out in the handful of changes?
No,
all very modest changes, if any.
Okay.
yep. A lot of terminology updating. Josh had some, of course, just keeping up with, costs of doing business, basically. Most of them were under $5. Some, you know, $1 here, $3 there, but very, very minimal. I can put together a summary for you if you'd like to see, something like that.
There's a lot of things, like if you look at the zoning permits, where they're at $200 or $100, we usually try to keep those relatively round numbers, so they only get modified every 3 or 4 years when 200 becomes 2 1/4, something like that. We don't do a 3%, 4% increase annually, because it would be well, Kay's not here anymore. Kay likes round numbers. I like round numbers when it comes to fee schedules too. It's much easier for people to understand.
I guess with solid waste, we got, I mean, pretty much my fees were reflective of my assessments, so going up that 20 to 25%.
Yep.
Compared to the, same with the assessments.
That's
A lot of
the-
those in, like environmental services, you know, I recognize those numbers, but, you know, there's a lot of detailed ones here I didn't
Yep.
compare from last year.
Yeah, and most of those didn't change. The majority of the changes are coming from the solid waste, and they're trickling down from the conversation we had last week about changing the solid waste assessment. And then the fees would be following those same increases as Josh mentioned.
Environmental did not change at all. As did, the auditor's office did not change at all. The assessor's office, their passport fees went up $5 on the books for both age groups. No changes in the administrator's section. And then just those handful that Josh had. No changes in the GIS one or in Heartland Express. Highway, we did some verbiage cleanup regarding the restocking. You see it says now restocking cost, plus 10%. And we also added the plus tax to be more accurate. Chip added the lease fee for recreational cabins was absent last year. And the recorder, she removed the line that was redundant. And I think the sheriff's office went up in their processing fee, $5, from 55 to 60. How the spreadsheet's laid out, when you make a lot of adjustments to it, it changes a lot of things, so the red line, that's why the red line isn't presented here. I can provide that for you if you'd like to see it.
Sure.
Okay.
So on the balance, administrative and otherwise, related to solid waste, following the solid waste fee or solid waste assessment is reflected in the fees as well.
Is there any further questions?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Item B is to approve the union contracts. As the agenda item states, Commissioner Kruger and Christensen and myself have been working since September on these contracts. Well, the status that we're at right now is we're working on the final red lines to make sure that the language of the contract supports the agreements. All 7 contracts have agreement by each of the business units. Then it's right now, it's between myself and the business agents, just to make sure that the language in the contract reflects the language of the agreements. And I think at this point in time, I have one on my desk that came in Friday afternoon where I want to go back in and double check the language on a couple of items. Otherwise, they're almost 100% ready for signatures. And rather than call a special meeting later this year, I was bringing this forward to ask that the board would approve the contracts based on the main elements of the agreements and the tentative agreements that were listed on the summary, and allow Board Chair Van Kempen and myself to sign off on behalf of the county when those final contracts are approved. And I'd be happy
Mr.
to.
Chair, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Shar.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom.
I'd be happy to review any of the summary of the contract changes if you have questions, if there's any further discussion, but I think this relatively clear. The summary is about the same through all of the contracts, and in most cases, when we negotiated something that was different, it was applied to the balance of the contracts.
There's no further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Then we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, and this is the resolution to establish the final budget, levy, and salary and per diems for 2023. As the background information says, we're still requesting a preliminary levy of $19,100,000, which is a 19% increase from last year. It includes the $1.6 million to be set aside for future capital and economic development. We've discussed that about $600,000 of that future capital is defraying costs in the 2023 budget. Approximately $500,000 is allocated towards economic development projects in '23, and about $500,000 is allocated, is designated for future use. I think the most important question that you all asked at the last meeting is what is the impact in 2024 and 2025? And I hope that the summary that I sent you on Saturday, I think it was that I sent it, identified the compensation budget in 2023 as being significant because we not only had the 3% cost of living increase, but we also had the adjustment to the new classification system. But then you see in 2024 and 2025 that the proposed compensation budgets are going up 4% and 3.3% in those 2 years. And the primary condition on that is that we're not adding staff in '24 and '25. So we would have to be presented with very good evidence to even consider requests for addition in 2024 and '25. The budget as proposed does approve the budget for the positions that were requested in 2023. Any of those new positions that are included in this budget would still have to come to the board before being filled. I guess I'd pause there for a minute and ask if there were any questions.
I would have one on the 3 salaries.
Yes.
Attorney, sheriff, and commissioners. I did notice the attorney and sheriff have a 7% increase. Yeah, I would prefer to also see commissioners follow that same 7%.
And that makes perfect sense. The attorney and the sheriff got the bump to the new classification system and then the 3%. And that's how that's different. It's probably a miss right now to have the commissioner set at the exact 3% without the adjustment that all the other staff got.
So we don't play catch-up later. And I mentioned that last time about,
Yes.
we want to keep it to where
Yeah.
people would be willing to run for the commissioners.
So if I'm not mistaken, adding another 4% would make that 27,595.
Do you need a motion on that, or just?
Honestly, if that's the only correction that you would have, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution with that amendment.
Okay.
Are you ready for a motion?
Think so? Any questions? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve this levy with salaries with that one amendment on the commissioner's salary to 7%.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 13D is something that comes out of AMC, and it is asking all 87 counties to participate and adopt a resolution in support of a formula change for community supervision. We've been having conversation about the cost of probation efforts in the county. We know that it's not completely funded now. And we also know that our needs are probably going to be increasing. So this is just the one pager talks about the cost of that. The resolution is saying that Hubbard County is agreeing with the AMC platform, and we would like to see that those funding levels change so that that is covered.
Mr. Chair, when I read through this information, it said that Minnesota is last in the nation for funding. I'm not on anything on AMC that has looked into this. Whoever has been a part of that, could you explain why Minnesota is last in funding?
I'm on that policy committee, Shar. I don't think anybody really can explain why that is. They just haven't funded it. There's 3 different models, I think, that kind of
Yep, I read about those, yep.
convolute things, and they fund them differently. And that's probably part of the problem why nothing ever gets done, is they need to equalize that and treat them very similar, and then it probably would be easier to get those funding increases that are needed. But the last I believe I heard was it's been over 10 years since there's been a change in the funding allotment.
And
So
that's-
Dave, it still talks about AMC's got a formula and, that would be a definite increase. Is the formula ready to go? So if they can get this passed legislatively, it can be changed right away? Or is it still a work in process?
I believe so. The policy group created a separate committee that did a lot of work on this. And the step they're at right now is just trying to get that lobby pressure on the legislative branch
Okay.
to realize that this needs to change.
Yep.
Some of the other details, I don't know if they're that far along yet, but just really brainstorming, trying to figure out how to get it done. This came up as probably the most logical thing. If you can get all 87 counties to sign on to a resolution, I guess it's maybe not demanding, but it is pretty forceful that this needs to be addressed. That's probably the first step to wake them up. So, I certainly would recommend as a member of that committee that we sign on to this resolution. Even though we're in a pretty good position in Hubbard County being a DOC county, but some of those CBA counties, they really struggle with this.
Now, the financial impact on the Hubbard County budget is relatively minor. But I think it kind of sets the stage for hopefully more conversations between counties and state services. I mean, when we think about the courts system and the costs that the counties absorb relative to that, and then think just one layer further, the buildings that the court systems require, and the fact that that really falls back onto the counties to provide for the cost of that, I think that that's another area. This is just probably an easier thing to accomplish this year.
Another thing to add to that, a lot of the rural counties really weren't aware of how that operated. We've been blessed here with our DOC department heads. They have come around to the county at minimum once a year and had a discussion with the county boards. But that discussion was had in front of the state commissioner of corrections, and a lot of the county commissioners had said they had never, ever seen their DLC supervisor at their county board meetings for years. So they really didn't understand how all this works. So having this resolution and getting this discussion in front of the county boards, pushing the ball forward, should really help.
And Mark Smith, with the DOC, has shown up to a lot of our managers' meetings. And next week, when we have one, Mark would like to speak with you and I afterwards. I know that Mark would like to speak with all the commissioners at some point too, about where we're at and where we go from here and stuff. So, yeah, this is important. And like you say, we're not hurting as much as some other counties
Right.
are, but.
But I think we need to throw our support behind it. And I would move to adopt this resolution.
All righty, thank you, David. And I'll second it. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now on to 13E.
13E is basically just the housekeeping and the follow-up from our conversation last week with Mike Lickner with the DNR. And included are the packet that he provided from the township and the conversations that he had throughout the county, and then a cleaned up version of the letter of support for this. And it's kind of it's kind of a goofy thing that it says understood that Minnesota or Hubbard County approval may or may not be required for the continuation of this process. We've had that conversation, but the state's change in attitude has been that they want to make sure that they're having conversations at the local level before they proceed with these as well. And hopefully the two parcels in Hubbard County advance ahead of the balance of these. It'd be nice to get those done.
Yes. And it's nice that we've been, in a sense, part of the process. So, is there a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Tom. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Do you have anything else, Jeff?
I would skip down and hit meetings to note before you do your committee reports, so I don't forget.
Okay.
One is the registration for the legislative conference in St. Paul on February 22nd, 23rd came out yesterday. So if you're planning on attending, please coordinate with Denise and she'll make reservations. And then right now we're looking ahead and we are planning to host the Hubbard County Township Association meeting in January. Unfortunately, this is one of those times when when it's falling on the same date as the date of our planning commission meeting. So we have a conflict for the use of this room and the planning commission needs to use that. So I've communicated to Theora and asked her if we can either move to the 16th or the 30th, or if we can look for using another room within county facilities to host that. But they were planning on having it here that night, and we have planning commission that night. They won't both work in the same space. So I'll work that out with her, and she'll share that message about what the decision is when it's done.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, the concept behind that was, there's still people that would rather Zoom it. So they
Yep.
were hoping by meeting the county board meeting, they could have in-person plus Zoom.
Yeah, and we can do that from other facilities. We have technology to do that elsewhere, so if we met over at Extension or downstairs in social services, we could still accomplish that. Or if we really thought we were gonna have a smaller group, we could use one of our conference rooms, but they only hold about 10 or 12 people. So I will work with Theora and we'll figure something out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, with that, then we'll move on to committee reports. Anybody like to start?
I can.
Thank you, David.
Not much since last week. But, we had a Northwest Emergency Communication Board meeting Wednesday. That went well. And additionally, had an update at Heritage with the executive committee meeting that afternoon after the 13th board meeting. And things are progressing a little bit. We dropped one of the pool contracts, and hopefully we're aiming to be down to 2 or 3, I think is all. There's still 8 contracts right now. We can get down to 2 or 3 by the end of the year. That'll significantly impact the expenses, lower them significantly, which will help a lot. And census has improved by a couple of residents at Heritage too. So things kind of moving in the direction it's supposed to be. Not quite as fast as we'd like, but at least it's going the right way.
You think 2023 will be in the plus side?
What's that?
You think it'll be making money in 2023?
Maybe come January, if all those contracts do drop away, which brings up another, hiring has been going well. So there's been plenty of applicants, and we're adding significant amounts of hires. The key is, are they the right ones to help drop away the nursing pool contracts? And if they are, then say that costs 3 times more than it should. That alone would probably solve 80% of our problem.
Right.
As long as we don't have a significant dip in census again. So, yeah, it's real positive. If we can continue to progress there, we can at least get to the point where hopefully we dug a little hole the first month or two, but if those contracts disappear, we can probably dig out of that and still cash flow for the year.
Good news.
It's not great, but it's been in worse spots, for sure.
Tom?
It's only been a week, so the only meeting I had since then was the SWCD meeting, and I guess think the significant thing to come out of that, Crystal covered this morning, and that was the one watershed one plan. Oh, and now that we have that memorandum of understanding, we probably should add that to our committee list. And,
Yes.
I would like to be on it, and whoever wants to be alternate.
I think the two of you are in that
Yeah,
watershed,
you
so it
and
would make sense.
Yeah.
Or even Char, but you guys can duke it out.
Yeah.
So maybe in January, when you come up with a draft for the committees, have that one as one of the items on there.
You want it to be active on it?
Yes, because I
Correct.
would.
Yeah,
like to.
I'll serve as alternate then.
Good, good. Alrighty, and then myself, I had JDAI, which is Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, and we spoke about the Detention Risk Assessment Instrument, which basically, they'll take a juvenile and do an assessment. It's kind of like a triage, as they're talking here. Will he show up for court, and kind of evaluating those kinds of things. So can he be released back to his parents? Does he need to go into detention, and those kinds of things. That was a short meeting, and they're hopefully gonna have everything as far as this assessment tool completed, and we're gonna talk more about it in February. The other meeting I had was the Mississippi Headwaters Board, which is a board, of course, of 8 counties that deal with the Mississippi Headwaters Board. We had one commissioner who moved, became a vice chair on the, or vice chair, vice president, anyhow, with AMC. So Neil had to give way earlier this year, and Scott from Crow Wing County came on board. We had 3 other commissioners that did not win re-election or chose not to seek re-election, so we've gonna have a kind of a new outlook on that board next year. I'm the chair currently of that board. We only had one variance request, and that was in Morrison County. There again, the Mississippi Headwaters Board has jurisdiction over the first 400 miles of the Mississippi River, and we go basically 500 feet on either side of the river. So when there's any development or stuff like that that goes on, it comes before not only that county's Board of Adjustment and Equalization, but also the Mississippi Headwaters Board. And this variance, the resident was looking to add a garage to the back side of their home, which would be not on the river. So it was kind of just a formality. There was some questions because of the pictures and that. It looked like it might not have the setback from the lot lines and stuff like that. But we ended up approving that. And let's see, we talked a little bit about what we're hoping to accomplish with the legislature next year. Certain kinds of funding, certain projects that we'd like to go through with. And also with, of course, with the Crow Wing One Watershed, One Plan. I don't know if we're gonna be one of the stakeholders or not, because it's really not part of the Mississippi, but there are other One Watershed plans in the state where it will involve our jurisdiction here on the Mississippi Headwaters Board, and we're gonna hopefully join those discussions. And that's all I have, just those 2 meetings. And if there's nothing else to bring before the board?
Sure.
Oh, sure, excuse me.
Shar signed out. They were
Sure.
they were finishing up, so she signed out.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Tom. And I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.